So we're talking today about state legislation to create new housing opportunities. And we're going to start with AB 302 for community college students who are homeless. And then we're going to get an update on SB 50 and also talk a little bit about SB 4, a competing housing proposal, which we haven't touched upon yet. So, Christian, you covered the Assembly member Mark Berman's press conference on Tuesday having to do with AB 302. Was there information there that came out that was new, surprising to you? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the press conference on Tuesday was very much just a formal update from Mark Berman. He kind of wanted to address his issues with AB 302 and more kind of just wanted to change the narrative more on focusing on the students. So there's a group of students at the press conference with him that mainly took over the show. So it was like maybe about 5 minutes of him reiterating what AB 302 was and what it was meant to serve, or what people it was meant to serve, and then he actually let those people speak a little bit more. So it was a student called Matthew Bodo. I don't know if I'm saying his last name right, Bodo, and he was one of the students who came out to Mark Berman addressing these issues. He is a third-year Foothill student, Foothill College student. And he actually experienced living in his car for on and off about 2 years.
Yeah.
And this was still during while he was working full-time and going to school full-time.
See, to me, this is a hidden problem.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think people realize that in the parking garages and parking lots, students are living in their cars.
Yeah, definitely.
Crazy.
And the main issue is also that, yes, they are living in their cars and sometimes in parking garages. But the main thing is that they're not really given a place to go to. So it's either a hit or miss of actually being able to go to those parking garages where it might be a little bit safer compared to maybe like an industrial parking lot or some random, street in Palo Alto, or not even in Palo Alto, like in San Jose and surrounding areas.
Yeah.
But Christian, going back to the very first thing you said, you mentioned one of the points of the press conference to change the narrative. What exactly was the narrative before, and what are they trying to change it to?
So, and this was going off, I was reading a lot of the comments that were underneath the article posted online at Palo Alto Online, and the narrative is a lot focused on the issues and problems surrounding this topic. So a lot of the issues are, of course, that's a state mandate bill, so they have to, the money has to come from the state. That's the main issue, is that the community colleges, they're going to get reimbursed for having to
For security and that kind of stuff.
Exactly, for security and all that stuff. So I guess a lot of taxpayers are just trying to figure out how that's going to affect them. And, there's that narrative also. And it's also a lot about, like, what other things are going to come out. So, like, a lot of issues that are being addressed maybe, like, in academic senates for some, to put it this way. In the academic senate for DeAnza College, they were discussing this last week or 2 weeks ago. I can't remember exactly when. And their issues were more concerned about the security, about how Foothill DeAnza police are going to start having to introduce these new ways to deal with students who are having to sleep in their cars overnight. It's not just a day-to-night transition. They have to have protocols. They have to have training to kind of, address these situations.
Yeah.
Does Berman have an answer to these kinds of concerns?
He does not, no.
Okay.
When I spoke with him, like I said, he wanted to very much make it known that this isn't a solution. This is just a temporary kind of short-term bandage solution to an overall bigger problem.
Yeah, I was struck by the number that was thrown out there. 400,000 students in California possibly are homeless.
Yeah, if you extrapolate the information that was given to us by that Real College survey done, there's about 400,000 if you take it into the 2.1 million students that are in the community college.
So it's 19%.
Yeah,
That's pretty astonishing. One in five almost. Yeah.
That's huge. So you've been the editor-in-chief of the DeAnza Community College newspaper. Have you guys looked into whether or not there are homeless students at DeAnza?
We have been looking into that. Personally, I've been in talks with a few professors who again, it's kind of confidential with privacy reasons, but there have been instances where a professor has personally talked to me about a student who has faced situations where she had to sleep in one of the 2 parking garages at DeAnza, and she herself has known of another person when she was sleeping there that also had to sleep there as well. So.
One thing that strikes me about the bill as it's proposed is that even though it's a state mandate, there's a lot of responsibility for each community college to decide what makes sense for it. Can you address that at all? Like what?
Yeah, so when I was speaking with Mark Berman, that was one of the questions I had for him because, as you know, the bill, the wording in it's very loose. You know, and he did that for a reason. According to him, he wanted to have it so that the community colleges have all the power to make their own rules, make their own regulations to that. That's mainly just because each college is different.
Yeah, sure. Both in size and layout.
Exactly. So, yeah.
Yeah, it strikes me. So we've talked about a little bit about security. Who all is involved in policing the campus, really, and how would that kind of shake out for the college? Like, who do they have to work with?
That's also part of what the community college has to address themselves. So that was, again, going back to the academic senate for DeAnza specifically, that was one of the issues that they wanted to address, and they still haven't really had that one-on-one conversation with their chief of police. It's something that they have to work out themselves because one of the main topics that they address with security reasons is that the hours of operations for when they're going to allow students to sleep there, what time they're going to have to kick them out because they don't want to have them 100% of the time there to, increase encampments or something like that.
Yeah, that seems like a sticky situation.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because they are living there, so it's not, the car's not going to go anywhere. All their belongings are there. Like, what do you do with them during the day?
Yeah.
So are we expecting this bill to kind of change? Is Berman saying this is like a first step and we're going to have more amendments, or is this kind of the proposal that it looks like is going to be advancing to other committees and ultimately the full legislation?
It seems like this is going to be the bill that pushes on. From my conversation with him, he didn't really address much of changes for the bill. He just wants this to be the final solution, not the final solution, but the final step to pushing for this short-term solution.
So, talking a little bit about the students or the Foothill College student that was at the press conference, can you just share kind of what his story has been?
Yeah, so he is, again, a third-year community college student, and he had to be living in his car for about 2 years on and off, working and going to school. He was talking a lot just about, again, how this is more of a first step solution. That's what everybody's really just saying throughout the conference. It seems a little bit weird to say this, but it seems like everybody was on the same page. Pretty much saying and repeating the exact same thing everybody else is saying.
Welcome to the world of press conferences.
Yeah, it's like
I think they talk to each other ahead of time.
copy and paste.
So it seems like they're really managing expectations for this bill. Not only is it a first step solution, which qualifies the word solution, but it's not really even a solution because having kids sleep in cars and parking lots does not sound like an ideal situation for anybody at all. So it sounds like they're kind of saying, we got this proposal, but don't kind of put all your eggs in this basket.
Yeah, definitely. Because again, their main thing was like, there are students today or tonight. There's going to be a student tonight who has to go and sleep in his car. So their kind of like logic behind trying to push a bill that like this AB 302 is to at least help that one student or those 40,000 students or those 400,000 students tonight to be able to sleep in a safe place.
It's like triage legislation.
Exactly. It's a situation that's happening right now. So what do we do now?
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's not unlike what the cities have been dealing with RVs parked on streets perpetually. East Palo Alto has proposed a safe parking lot. They have a plan in place that they've already approved. I think it's under construction right now to provide not just the parking lot, but sanitary measures and security measures and whatnot. It's something I didn't expect to show up in the community colleges, but I see that it's a great need.
No, and it's interesting you talk about that too, because security is one of the one of the facets of this problem, but there's many different other facets. Like, where are they going to go to, heat up their food in the morning, or where are they going to go to the bathrooms, or where we do have that AB 1995, I believe, for allowing students to use the showers. But again, it's something that it has so many different issues tied along with it, with not even just housing insecurities, but food insecurities, transportation insecurities.
Yeah.
And it's a huge package, really.
Yeah, there's a lot there. Well, we look forward to your continuing coverage on this.
Thank you.
Okay. And Gennady, we talked with two community members last week about SB 50, and I understand that there's been some movement on that front, and we also have competing measures in the Senate. So can you give us an update on those?
Competing/collaborating measures.
Okay.
Yes, this was a big week for the Senate bills 50 and 4. Senate Bill 50 we've already discussed last week, and this was the subject of our story last week's edition, but it's Scott Wiener's bill that would basically allow density and height increases in areas near transit hubs. And so this week, SB 50 went in front of the Senate Housing Committee, which Scott Wiener chairs. So he got out of his chair spot and went over to present to his committee. And it passed. It advanced by a 8-1, it was like 9-1-1 vote. And then right after that, immediately after he finished, Mike McGuire, Democrat from Healdsburg, came to present his bill, the bill that he and Jim Bell, senator from San Jose, co-authored, but McGuire kind of took the lead on this. It's called SB 4, and it tries to counteract this notion of a one-size-fits-all approach, which is a big criticism of SB 50 that we've been hearing from pretty much everybody who opposes it. And so, from his presentation, this seems more like a three-size-fits-all approach.
Okay.
He's got different criteria for density and height for cities that have more than 50,000 and fewer than 50,000 residents. So Palo Alto's got more than 50,000, so in a sense it's in the same group as San Francisco and San Jose. So it's not a very huge distinction, but it is some. And what it does is for cities that have more than 50,000 people, and in areas within half a mile of fixed rail or ferry, basically you'd be able to have an additional story of height. You're also going to have density bonuses by right. So you can build out on your lot to the maximum density. And there's also a distinction in terms of fourplexes and duplexes. If you're a city of 50,000 or more population, fourplexes are allowed by right in these areas near transit. And if you have less than 50,000, duplexes are allowed by right. The last thing I'm going to say is parking, because that's an issue that's come up huge in 50. And there's a distinction here. And this time, the threshold is 100,000 population. So in this case, Palo Alto would actually be with the smaller cities.
Okay.
But if you're a big city, San Francisco, San Jose, Oakland, whatever, then there would be no parking requirements within a quarter mile. And there would be half spots per unit between a quarter and half a mile.
Okay.
So
playing off of you're near transit, so public transit, so probably everyone's going to take public transit.
Right. Yeah. And for cities like Palo Alto and many others that have fewer than 100,000, the standard would be half a parking spot within half a mile.
Yeah.
So there would be no need to park at all like you would under SB 50 in the transit-friendly areas. So it's seen as kind of a bit of a softer, more moderate approach.
Okay. I know that there was a lot of complaint or concern about single-family neighborhoods under SB 50 and what that would do to. So I imagine that the same issue would come up for SB 4 for how single-family neighborhoods near transit corridor or transit stops, where these duplexes could go up by right. You said so you'd have a single-family
or fourplexes.
In the case of Palo Alto, because of the population. So it could be a single-family home, it could be a fourplex, it could be another single-family home. So it could be mixed in there. Yeah,
it could be. And so I assume we might, I shouldn't assume too much because we haven't heard too much feedback from communities about SB 4 compared to SB 50. But I expect it'll bring up same kind of criticism, but maybe a slightly softer tone. Because as you recall, SB 50 does have this jobs-rich provision, which is still kind of loosely defined, which could mean a neighborhood that's not even near transit, but it's in a job-rich city, could have these height and density kind of bonuses. Yeah. Whereas SB 4 only targets the transit areas. So while that could still cover some single-family neighborhoods, it has much more limited kind of height allowance.
Yeah.
And more limited geographic reach.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was wondering about. So SB 50 has 45-foot and 55-foot building height minimums. So what's the case with SB 4? Not a specific number, but
yeah, it would basically defer to existing height limits, and it would just give you an extra story. So it doesn't have a number like 45 or 55 like Scott Wiener's does. I think it differs much more to design standards that cities have already. And, Scott Wiener would tell you that SB 50 does as well. I think many people kind of debate that because if you allow much more height and density, even if you retain the existing design review process, that is a bit of a mandate from the top that some people aren't comfortable with.
Yeah, there's still that local control versus state mandate.
But the politics is interesting because SB4 and SB50, like McGuire and Wiener, are talking to each other and negotiating with the idea that they're ultimately going to present a proposal that they both back, which to me is a kind of significant development. As you may recall, SB 827 was last year's version of SB50 that Scott Wiener proposed. That fell by a 4-6-1 vote in committee, and both Jim Bell and Mike McGuire voted against it. So now they're talking, and there seem to be some consensus about encouraging density near transit, and that's what the bill is going to be. And April 24th is a big date. That's when their proposals are going to be in front of the Governance and Finance Committee of the Senate. But it seems like they're trying to hash out some kind of compromise to allow density near transit in a way that's that makes mayors and up and down the peninsula
smaller cities happier. So can you walk us through the process? Are we at a point where the bills are going to keep changing? Are there amendments? How does that work?
Yeah, unlike AB 302, I think there is going to be a lot of changes to come because both McGuire and Wiener have basically said that they don't want to have two competing bills. So there's going to be changes. And when I talked to Scott Wiener from my story, he also said we have a long road ahead of us and a lot will change. So I do expect a lot of amendments. I think April 24th would be a big date because we'll see what their backdoor negotiations kind of. I don't mean that in a sinister way, but they're talking. It's not in public meetings. So April 24th is we're going to see what they came up with, and they've diplomatically stayed away from each other's bills. Like they've been abstaining. They didn't vote on each other's proposals just because to kind of demonstrate that they're still working. So yeah, a lot of changes to come. Then it's going to go as part of the process. It's going to go to that committee. If it advances out of that committee, it'll either go to other committees or go to the full Senate, and then. Obviously, if it gets voted by them in the Assembly and the governor signs it, whatever the compromise bill will emerge could become law. But we're still months and months away from that.
We're miles away from that, yeah. And the city of Palo Alto hasn't taken a stance necessarily on 4 or 50.
They haven't taken an official stance, but there's been a pretty strong kind of concerns about SB 50. Most people oppose it. Adrian Fine has been a notable exception. Like it would have been much easier for us to get a guest for the anti-SB 50 side than for the 4. But so, and basically when Jerry Hill had his meeting with every mayor from his district, he said every mayor in that room, which is like 2 dozen of them almost, had concerns about SB 50 relating to one size fits all, that kind of stuff. So. I feel like Palo Alto is pretty consistent with those concerns. They don't like it and they want to see changes, with some exceptions.
Yeah.
Adrian Fine.
Okay.
What are some public comments on that? Like any Palo Alto community people talking about these bills?
Oh yeah, lots of them. I mean, we had a story last week in which I went to 2 forums on SB 50, and one of them had about 100 people. Well, actually, I tuned into one of them and I attended the other. One of them had about 100 people. Most of them like SB 50 and at least the concepts behind it. And on the one with 200 people overwhelmingly hated it. So it's very polarizing, So people have very strong opinions. I think right now it wouldn't poll very well in Palo Alto because many people are concerned that single-family neighborhoods will change, and they're still kind of the sacred cow in land use zoning. And in any kind of attempt from the state to allow 3- or 4-story buildings in single-family neighborhoods is going to get a rough reception in Palo Alto. So we've been seeing that from a lot of the public.
Kind of makes you wonder what the reaction is going to be to SB4. If it's
muted outrage, if such a thing exists.
Muted, okay.
Yeah,
we will see.
We'll see.
Okay, thanks, Gennady. Thanks, Christian.
Thank you.
That wraps up this edition of Behind the Headlines. If you want to stay on top of all the local news, go to paloaltoonline.com. We also have a daily email that's free that you can get, and all the news will be pushed out to you. And that's at paloaltoonline.com/express to sign up for that. We'll see you next week.